We're talking about the hard work of love. The verse that is our springboard is from 1 Corinthians 13. It says, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Kind of what we find as we come to this passage, the recognition that love isn't easy. Love isn't easy because patience isn't easy. Love isn't easy because kindness isn't easy. I don't say this critically, but matter-of-factly, we struggle with love because we struggle with kindness. What is kindness? Jesus fleshes it out for us a little bit. What it says, do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, because He is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Do to others as you would have them do to you. There are at least 3 rules that men and women live by. The iron rule, silver rule, and the golden rule. The iron rule is might makes right. And Charles Darwin, he gave scientific respectability to the iron rule. In his opinion, all species survive, thrive, and develop by destroying their weaker competitors. Might makes right. The silver rule, what is hateful to yourself, do to no other. If you would not want somebody to do it to you, don't do it to them. And when you think of that, you think of the parable of the Good Samaritan, where the man gets beaten up by the side of the road, the Jewish priest and the Levite. They come by, they walk on the other side of the road. They don't go over and kick him in the side. They don't rifle his pocket. They don't do anything to him they would not want somebody to do to them. They were silver rule men. The golden rule is do to others as you would have them do to you. And that is the Good Samaritan who provides for the individual. He brings him to a place and he does for him what he would want somebody to do for him. When Jesus expressed the golden rule, nothing like it had ever been proclaimed as a way that people should treat one another. This rule of life was absolutely unprecedented. And this is what Jesus is after, what he is identifying as the calling card of his followers. A couple surprising things as we come to this passage, as we think about kindness in particular and love in general, is who to whom he would have us express it, not just to those who we would be inclined to be kind to, but to those who we wouldn't be inclined to be kind to. That's one of the surprising things about this to enemies. Kindness is to do what is helpful to the person. It's not really an emotional thing. Love in general in the Bible is a verb, not a noun. It's something you do. It's something you can take a picture of. And kindness has that sense, doing for another person what you would like for them to do to you. That's one of the surprising things. Another surprising thing in this passage is this. It says, God, He is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Generally, when we think of kindness, in a church context, it's a little bit easier to ascribe kindness to Jesus. We get that. Jesus, and we have the stories. To apply kindness to God the Father seems a stretch. There's places in the Bible where God the Father smites people, where he punishes the ungrateful and the wicked. It becomes then interesting and puzzling when it says that God is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. I think this is one of the most provocative, astonishing verses in the Bible. God, the Most High One, is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. How can we justify this when it doesn't seem to fit the evidence when we read accounts in the Old Testament? How are we to say, well, and here's what it says in Titus. Remind the people to be subject to rulers and authorities, to be obedient, to be ready to do whatever is good, to slander no one, to be peaceable and considerate, and to show true humility toward all men. At one time, we too were foolish, disobedient, deceived, and enslaved by all kinds of passions and pleasures. We lived in malice and envy, being hated, hating one another. But when the kindness and love, literally that word is love for mankind. When the kindness of love for mankind, of God our Savior appeared, he saved us, not because of righteous things we had done, but because of his mercy. When did kindness and God's love for mankind arrive on the planet? It says, when Jesus appeared, God's love for mankind appeared. That's when it became apparent. God's love for mankind is not fully apparent in the Old Testament. It's not to say that God was not that way, but he doesn't appear that way all the time. But it says God's kindness and love for mankind. When did that appear? It appeared when Jesus came. Was it as apparent prior to Jesus coming? The answer is no. There's things that don't appear to be kind and grateful. Now, what Jesus would have us understand, if we want to know what God is like how Jesus reveals him to be. God is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. How are we to be kind? That is what God would have us be characterized by. Here's what it says in Titus. It gives us a sense for what this takes. How great is the love the Father has lavished on us that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know him. Dear friends, now we are children of God, and what we will be like has not yet been made known. But we know that when he appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. In order to be like God, we've got to see what God is like. We've got to see him as he is. When we see him, we will be like him on the far side of eternity. We will clearly see what God is like, and seeing him will automatically transform us into being like him. On this side of eternity, that does not happen in an absolute sense, as it will on the far side. However, our ability to be like God is directly related to seeing him as he is. What is God like? God is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. It was a TV show on What's My Line. Remember that? Anybody remember What's My Line? Thank you very much. If you a smattering of hands went up. what's my line was about. They had an individual who had done something notable, and they brought this individual and two others. And so the panel, they would ask questions and try to determine who the real X and so was. And at the end of this thing, when they had grilled them, then they said, will the real X and so please stand up? And there was three people in chairs, and the middle guy would kind of fake to stand up, and he would sit back down. And then finally, the guy who did the thing, he would stand up. Let's say we put three chairs up in front. And the first one says, I am God. I am the God of the Garden of Eden. Eat the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and you will die. I am God. I am the God of Mount Sinai. The mountain will die. I am God. I am the God of the new covenant. I am kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. They say, will the real God please stand up? Will number one stand up? Will number two stand up? Will all three of them stand up? Well, most people believe that all three of them would stand up, or 2 out of 3 would stand up. And it's hard for us to reconcile. How can they all three be God and seem to be so different? God stood up when Jesus Christ came to the planet. God is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. What we're supposed to do is express new covenant faith through love. What we felt our mission was 31 years ago is to stand on this place and reflect what God is actually like. God is like Jesus. And when there's a disparity between accounts in the old and accounts in the new, which one is the real God? The real God is the God that Jesus reflected. That's what God is like. He is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. And as we perceive this God, as we think about what he's like and clearly identify him, we start to be like him. You know what that means? We'll start to be a little more kind a little more often, because God is kind.